Woody Wommack and Adam Gorney, big time news on Sunday as Scott Frost, no longer at his alma mater, Nebraska, decides to move on after losing to Georgia Southern and starting the year a very rough 1-2. We knew this would be coming soon, especially after the loss yesterday. Still a bit surprising that it happened today, especially given the way his contract was set up.
Yeah, and some would credit Trev Alberts for that. Some would say he's getting a big time payday for for failing at Nebraska. And so, either way, I think the way Alberts looked at this as he made the decision was, I need to do this now. I'm gonna lose the team. We're gonna lose the season. There was some talk, and I had been listening to some stuff that he had not necessarily lost the locker room, but people weren't really kind of buying Scott Frost anymore. They liked Mickey Joseph a whole lot. I think this all stems back to actually Dublin, Ireland. And, Scott Frost has not been successful at Nebraska the entire time he's been there. But when they're up in the third quarter. They're up, I think, double digits at that time. And he onside kicks. It almost felt like we're not going to be able to sustain this, and we need to do something to keep this going. So I think that was a big time mistake. There have been many, though. Along the way that we can discuss. But last night was it. I think everybody really realized it. Probably Scott Frost did too. I watched his post-game presser, and he seemed definitely down and understanding of just how bad that looked. And so it ends now. Oklahoma comes in next week. So at least Scott Frost is going to be a multi-millionaire and not have to deal with having to defend the Oklahoma Sooners this week.
Yeah, so, I know Trev Albert's getting a lot of credit this week. Oh, he did what had to be done. It's like, well, he should have fired him in the offseason. Like, he should have been fired. Now, I know it was kind of weird with Albert's coming in at an odd time last year, the way the AD transition happened. So, if you knew, I forget who said it once. I think it was the Florida AD. What has to be done eventually needs to be done immediately. Was that the
Jeremy Foley always had a saying at Florida that if something needs to be done one day, do it today. And like what that essentially means is like, don't wait to make decisions that are inevitable. And this was inevitable. And this is the tricky part about hiring the boy hero. This is the tough part about bringing back someone who's from Nebraska, who played at Nebraska, who everybody loves at Nebraska. Of course, everybody's going to pull for him. But when he's wildly outmatched and making bad decisions along his entire coaching career there, not maximizing players' abilities. And we've talked about this, but, Adrian Martinez, for his own faults, I mean, he's definitely had issues. Scott Frost either didn't maximize his ability or went after the wrong quarterback when he got the job. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is definitely a player who did okay at Nebraska. He ran the ball, he had some catches and those kinds of things. But then he goes to Kentucky for 1 year and absolutely blows up because they got him the ball the right way. He had over 1,100 receiving yards in the SEC in one season, and parlayed that into a second-round NFL draft pick. Those kinds of things, I think, along the way. And that's why it's dangerous to hire those guys. And it'll be interesting to see how Trev Alberts handles this. He, said all the right things in his press conference as expected. We'll see where he goes. I've heard Matt Campbell might be really the number one target. We'll see if that happens. But there are definitely big names out there. It is a very difficult job to win it. We can go down the numbers. I'm going to actually write about that this week, and I'm doing the research already, just how difficult it is to win at Nebraska in 2022. From a recruiting perspective, from basically no in-state recruiting and on down the line, there are a lot of things. And people point to, in the 90s they won. Yeah, but Tommy Frazier was from Florida. Lawrence Phillips was from California. You have to go into the Southeast, and you have to go out west or into Texas to get players. I think, I'm rambling here, but there have basically been studies been done about teams that have won the national championship over the last 30, 40 years. And all of the players that were of significance, a good majority of them were from the South or the West or from Texas. So that needs to be a focus of the next coach. And I think that needs to be a very significant consideration as Trev Alberts looks to see who has those recruiting connections to be able to get that done.
Yeah, and Nebraska does have a lot to offer, especially in the NIL era. There's no reason that they couldn't be doing something similar to what Louisville's been able to do, assuming they had the right. But, Scott, unfortunately, I just think like if Scott Frost deserved to move on from UCF to a better job after they went undefeated and they beat Auburn. But if he wasn't a Nebraska alum, he wouldn't have jumped to the level of job that he did going straight to Nebraska. He probably would have had a lower tier Power 5 job. And people may argue, hey, Nebraska is a lower tier job now the way it's been. But they wouldn't have hired him. He would have not been their number one candidate the way it went down.
Right.
Just if he wasn't a Nebraska alum, if he wasn't, like you said, the chosen one there. So I also don't think he ever ran his own offense. To me, it was bizarre. You mentioned Wan'Dale Robinson. He was playing running back. He was like goal line back, he's like 5'8", 160 pounds, just taking a pounding. And that's why he left. He loved Nebraska. He didn't want to leave. Yeah. But he had to, like you said, he had to get smart about it and say, I need to get the ball in my hands. And then you mentioned Martinez. He rode with him for 3 years. Then they finally say, okay, we're going to go into the portal. And it's like, okay, you go get Casey Thompson, who's a fine quarterback. But, I mean, Texas wasn't good last year, and they had no problem moving on from him. So I just think that you never saw him like – and I argued about this at the time when they hired him, and it was like, oh, he's a QB guru. He found Marcus Mariota. And it's like, well, we can argue about that one, who found him or whatever. I think that's a little dubious. I do think he gets credit for Mackenzie Milton, who, he wanted at Oregon, and the coaching staff at the time thought he was too short. And then Dylan Gabriel, Mackenzie Milton kind of had to strong arm them into even taking his commitment because they were from the same high school. And then he left, and he had his success under Josh Heupel. So I just think that, and Rob Cassidy texted me this like week one. He's like, we're seeing that the key to success for Scott Frost at Florida was, or at UCF was Florida athletes.
Yeah.
And he tried to get those guys to Nebraska. It is so hard to get people from the South to go live in Nebraska year round. I mean, guys who've never seen snow and haven't experienced cold, and it's just tough. It takes a special kind of breed, and it wasn't a match made in heaven. I just don't think he ever took, like I said, his own offense. And the big hire was they bring in Mark Whipple to take over the offense. And it's like, well, you only hired Scott Frost because he's an offensive guru.
Right.
And so what are you doing? So it's going to be a reset. And with the portal, I think you can turn things around a lot quicker. I mean, look at Georgia Southern, the team that beat him yesterday. People forget they fired their coach last year, and it was a guy who'd been there for a while. They bring in Clay Helton, and they turn things around really quickly. So I don't envy Nebraska. I think they have a great fan base, and I don't think that this is not deserved for them. It's been a frustrating decade, even going from a guy who I really liked and do like personally, and Mike Riley, and just didn't work. I mean, just last few guys haven't worked. I don't think they're rock bottom in terms of a talent place right now. They do have talent on the roster, but you got to find a guy with an identity, and it doesn't, it doesn't have to be an in-house guy. It doesn't have to be someone who played for Tom Osborne or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see. We can talk. We got articles up about the names. You can check out Inside Nebraska. They got a ton of content, our Nebraska site. So Gorney, we're going to be talking about this all week. So be sure to stay locked in. Thanks for joining me for a late night edition, and be sure to check out rivals.com for more coverage of Scott Frost's dismissal. Thanks, Gorney.
That's it.